Hello, good evening. Hi, I'm Allison, and behind the camera, making all the magic happen, and also contributing a lot to this very prop intensive show is producer Ken. And we are live from Gotham Quilts. Whether you are watching us on the replay or watching us live, hello from all of us in the shop here. So, this is kind of an interesting show. This is one of the things that I find that people are always a little intimidated by. So, you've been sewing your heart out, right? You've been picking fabric, you've been washing and pressing and cutting and stitching, and somewhere in that process, you grabbed a pattern. Maybe it's something you haven't sewn before. Maybe it's something a little outside of your comfort zone. And you said to yourself, you know what? I'm going to make this. I'm going to make this for myself. I'm ready. And then the pattern says interfacing, or it might be a little bit more specific and say lightweight interfacing. What do? What is a lightweight interfacing? You go to your local craft store or you browse us online at gothamquilts.com and you see all these numbers SF101, 9 or 831, 911. Which one is a lightweight interfacing? Well, today in this show, we are going to demystify interfacings. We're going to go through some of the most popular ones and also some of the ones you might use for very specific purpose. But buckle in, grab a drink, and get ready to learn probably more than you ever wanted to know about interfacing. So we are going to start where most patterns start. Most of the patterns that we see, especially in the quilting world, that kind of maybe we dabble or we dip our toe into the bag making, or maybe even some of those more structured bag making things. What you're going to see most often is a basically SF101. And that's where we're going to start today. So, actually, let me take just a step back and explain why we need interfacing. And then we'll get to the most popular interfacing. So, we're going to start at the very beginning and we're going to talk about quilting cotton. So, right here, I have, probably about a 6-inch square of quilting cotton. And you can see this beautiful drape. This is a Moda Grunge. It's got a lovely hand to it, but it doesn't have a lot of structure, does it? It's kind of floppy. And if I were to make a bag out of this, it might be a great kind of crumple it up and put it in your purse tote, but it wouldn't get you very far. Sometimes we need a little bit more structure. And so interfacing specifically and fusible interfacings, even more specifically, attach to the fabric and they give it some structure. Gives it a little bit of backbone. It's literally a second layer that we attach to our fabric so that it gives it a little bit of structure. So that's what we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about fusible interfacing. That's where we're going to start. It's the most popular. It's what you're probably going to end up using. We've got some sew-in interfacings, and I'll talk to you about those when we get to them. And then I'm going to show you the real specialty stuff, the stuff you might only pick up if you were making a very specific project or doing a very specific sewing task. So let's get started. We are going to talk, like I mentioned before, I got a little ahead of myself, about the most popular interfacing that we use at the shop. And that is something like an SF101, or we also love Profuse. They're basically the same thing. And this is one of the very few times you're going to hear me say this, but these are woven interfacings. And so if you think of your regular quilting cotton, this is a woven fabric. And so a woven interfacing basically is the same thing. It is fabric printed on the back with little dots, little beads of glue that you adhere to your fabric. And so a woven interfacing, just like a woven fabric, is going to have a really nice drape to it. But one of the things that might cause a little bit of heartburn, depending on what you're doing, is just like your quilting cotton, it does have some stretch to it. So not a whole lot that way. Not a whole lot that way, but when we get to the bias, or since this is still on the bolt, the nearly bias, you're going to see quite a bit more stretch on that bias way. So when you're using it, you do have to be somewhat mindful of the direction, the grain when you're cutting it out, and whether or not you're using it on the bias. So in the shop here, we generally use SF101, which is a Pellon product. Pellon is the brand, and Profuse interchangeably. And I'll show you, there's not much difference in between them. So if here is my quilting cotton, that's kind of floppy. This one, I had to label them because you really can't tell the difference that much. This one is SF101. So we've got the floppy quilting cotton and the SF101. You can see you already have some rigidity there. In a very similar way, we have our floppy quilting cotton and our Profuse here. Now, you might not be able to tell from these two very small swatches, again, SF101 and Profuse, but Profuse we like in bag making applications because it's just a teeny tiny bit stiffer. You get a little bit more thickness than you do on the SF101, and I can flip these around so that you can see what they look like, but they look very, very similar. So that is the SF101. It is probably the one you're going to see the most often. And it's one of the very few, I'm kind of looking over here, it's one of the very few that is woven. Most of these interfacings that you're going to see is non-woven. Now, there are some things that you'll want to do when you're using SF101 or Profuse, and this is going to apply to using all fusibles, okay? But I'm going to mention it at the top of the show here, and I'm going to keep talking about it. But this is the most important number one tip is use a pressing cloth. Every time, no exceptions. Because the entire back of this fabric is covered with little glue dots. If you get even just the tiniest bit over the outside of your fabric, you're going to end up with it on your iron. And that is no fun. That is a not good day in the sewing room. So make sure that you use a pressing cloth all the time to keep your iron nice and clean. In addition, if you aren't getting good adhesion, you could also dampen that pressing cloth. That could help too. Sometimes you need a little bit of steam to get these adhered, and one of these products actually puts that in the name. But definitely read the package instructions. Oftentimes there will be a little piece of paper in with your fusible that'll give you some instructions on how to use it. Usually it's about 10 to 15 seconds per side or per section. And if you remember last week's episode, the same thing applies here. You want to press your iron down, no smushing, because what smushing can do is, keep in mind, this is a woven product. If you are fusing it to a non-woven product, you could warp your fabric. Your fusible is going to stay put. You're going to end up with bubbles and wrinkles, and that, again, not a good day in the sewing room. So press your iron, not smushing. Okay, so that is, I don't want to say the OG, but it is the most popular. If you do any garment sewing at all, you're going to be very familiar with SF101. Stands for Shape Flex 101. It's used in collars and button interfacings and things like that. It's a very, very popular one. If you get the opportunity, stock up, because I can almost guarantee you're going to use it all the time. So a big thank you to producer Ken, who is keeping me with all these interfacings to show you, and we are done with the SF101. Now this, if SF101 is the most popular, I might suggest that this one is the second most popular. And we are talking here about 911. And this one is, now, when I give you these names, generally what we go by in the shop, we see it in a lot of patterns, is the Pellon name. Pellon is one of the biggest names in interfacing, and so you'll see a lot of times that number being referenced. But what this is this is a featherweight interfacing. So it's going to be a non-woven product. And when a non-woven product is made, it's usually kind of a fabric-like material that is made by either chemical means or heat means to fuse it together. And then on the other side of that, there's some fusible added. So this is considered a featherweight. This is going to be a little bit lighter than the SF101. What you might see this used most often for is t-shirt quilts. If you haven't been asked, if you are a quilter and you haven't been asked to make a t-shirt quilt yet, just know it's coming. We all get it. We're all going to be asked to make it. And if you choose to do so, 911, and I'm going to show you another product in just a second, is going to be your friend. T-shirts, as you are aware, are 9 times out of 10 going to be a knit product. They could be polyester, cotton, some kind of mix of the two, but either way, they are a knit product. And so t-shirts, which is why we love them so much, they stretch and move in all directions. And so it's really hard to get both accurate cuts and stitching it together in a way that looks pleasing and a way that's going to hold up over time. So whenever you're making a t-shirt quilt, you're going to back your t-shirt with an interfacing like this, or there's a special made product called Stability. I'm going to talk about that one a little bit more in just a second. And that is just going to hold your shirt in place. And that brings me to the second tip that you should always follow with interfacing is you want to fuse first, cut second. Now, this is especially important if you are using something that is movable or stretchable, like a t-shirt, for example, but it also works for all fabric. I like to use that method if I'm using quilting cotton and sewing a bag together, for example. I will rough cut my fabric, fuse the interfacing to it, and then use that fused piece to cut down to my final size. I just find that I run even less of a risk of getting fusible on my iron or having fusible bigger than my fabric piece. I just like it a little more. I like cutting the fabric once it has fusible attached. It's just got a real nice heft to it. And so fuse first, cut second. Now, the other piece that I will bring up here is that you will want to match your interfacing to your fabric whenever you can. Now, I showed this in the beginning here, but 911 comes in 2 different colors. If you've got dark t-shirts or if you've got dark fabric, use the dark one. If you have light, use the light. Now, not all of these interfacings come in a dark and a light, but whenever it does, use the one that matches your fabric first. If we are comparing 911 to the regular quilting cotton, and I'll put this on the same side so we're on the same side here, but you've got your regular quilting cotton non-interfaced, and here's the piece that's been fused with 911. You can see it's quite a bit floppier than, for example, the SF101 or ProFuse. You get just a little bit on that guy. This is used for, I mentioned t-shirts, but it's also used for something where you just need a little bit of oomph, a little bit of stability here. And I was thinking of stability, which is why I said that. So like, for example, this bucket hat, we did use 911 to make that. We wanted the brim to say nice and kind of flexible, very organic. We didn't want this to be too stuffy of a bucket hat. So that's what we used. And so that is an example of a product that you would use the 911 in. Now, I mentioned that there's another very similar product to 911 that's also used for t-shirt quilts. And this one really comes in clutch if you have 100% polyester shirts, for example. If you have cotton shirts or a cotton poly blend, either the 911 or the Stability work really well. If you have something that's really hard to get adhesion on, it's really hard to get that fusible to stick to the t-shirt, Stability is great. And so that's where I would reach for this one instead of the 911. This also really increases the stability of your t-shirts. And so like I said, they both work in very similar ways. This is especially great if you have something that's very hard to adhere to. let's see here. Let me go back to here, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing any of my notes. No. So as we're moving up so we started with the SF-101, and then we kind of took a little detour to go a little bit softer. Now we're going to jump back where we were with a little bit more rigidity, and then we get to something like the 931. Now this is, let me pull out the pins here so you can see here. It's really very similar. It's a non-woven interfacing, but this is going to be just a little bit more structured, a little more rigid than either the SF-101 or the 911. So this is, I think they're calling that, yeah, they're calling this a midweight. So 911 was a featherweight, SF-101 was shape flex, which is, I don't know, kind of in the middle here. And then this is a midweight interfacing. You would use that in something like this taco pouch where you want a little bit of structure, but you don't want it to be too firm. You can see I can still manipulate this, but when it's all puffed out, it stays exactly as I left it. It's still soft and nice to use, but it keeps its structure. And so that's where something like a mid-weight 931 is going to come into effect. Same as the featherweight, it's a non-woven product, and it's got the fusible on the one side, just a little more oomph to it. Now here is where stuff gets real. This is where we're getting to maybe the outer edges of what you might have stored up in your craft room, but I can almost promise you there are some great products there are great projects that are made with this product. So don't rule it out just yet. This is where we get to something like a Peltex is the Pellon brand name. Craftex is the Bozal name. This one is a really firm interfacing, and we've got a couple of different kinds here. I have here one-sided fusible. Now, I can show you, but it's not going to really look any different on camera. But with my hands, I can feel that there's a bumpy side and there's a smooth side, so I know which side the fusible is on. I have here a piece cut out. This is a sew-in. There's no fusible on any of this. And you can see it's got some rigidity. And this one is the Mama Jama. This is fused on both sides. Now these heavyweight, we're now into the heavyweight interfacings. This one here is about 1/8 of an inch deep, so you do get some texture to it. And like I said, there's some heavy duty fusible on both sides. I can feel that, and I'm wondering, you could probably even see that on the camera, all that texture. That's the fusible right there. And so this one, I fused both pieces of this fabric to it, and that's not going anywhere. That is definitely going to be in your project, giving you some stability. Now, where would you use something like this? One of the our most popular applications of the single-sided fusible is something like the stand and sew bag. This is a very cute bag that kind of folds up into just a little nothing of a bag, but it has these very firm sides. So if you think of like a grocery bag, for example, this is going to be the best, cutest grocery bag you have. The sides are going to stay up, so while you're filling it with all that fun stuff, or you could use it as a fun gift bag or put like a vase of flowers in there, and it's just going to stay nice and cute and lovely. But you can see you do have some rigidity there, and it just kind of bounces back. You could also use it for something like this backyard caddy by Sally Tomato. It holds sauces or bottles or whatever you want on the inside, kind of like I guess a beer, like a 6-pack of beer or something. You can tell I drink a lot of beer, right? And so it gives a lot of structure and also a lot of stability with this handle, for example. There's also some Craftex in there, and so it really makes it feel nice and solid. The other thing that you could consider using this for is, do you see how kind of nice that fused on there with all of that fusible product, all of that glue. This is a great application to put on the bottom of a bag. Even if you're not using this Craftex or Peltex, something this stiff, it's just a really nice base for a bag, even with softer sides. And so we've seen that in, I think, the inside outside zipper tote bag, where they recommend putting a little piece of Peltex, make it nice, get some fabric around it, fuse it, and then put that in the bottom. Or you could use a sew-in-one especially too. So anywhere you need a little bit of rigidity, do consider using something like the Peltex to just up your game when you're making those soft-sided bags, because it really does make a nice bottom, a nice solid bottom. Okay. So that is pretty much the edge of what you would reasonably see in any kind of project you're making as far as the stiffness goes. So that is probably the heaviest weight. It's certainly the heaviest weight we carry. It's the heaviest weight that I really see in bag making. So let's get now more into the special purpose fusible products or interfacing. And some of these are going to kind of cross a boundary. Is it interfacing? Is it now officially batting? You know, it's kind of a smushy category, which is why when you go to our website to shop for any of these items, our category is batting and interfacing. There's enough crossover between those two things that we just call them the same thing. A lot of them are switched up between different purposes. So what you can do is you can scan that QR code. If you are on your mobile device, go ahead and take a screen capture of that. And then if you go back into your photos, click on that QR code, and that'll bring you right to the batting and interfacing section of our website. So after that little commercial break, I'm going to bring you to one of the most popular interfacings in our shop. Now, there is a joke around the shop that we go through this so much that I am convinced our employees are eating it. I imagine it has good fiber, but I'm convinced that there's no way that we could be going through this much. But we keep it in stock because it has so many different purposes. And that is fusible fleece. I think I lost a pin. Nope. Okay. Fusible fleece. So it comes on the bolt like this. There are many, many different kinds. Most often I see it 45 inches. So you can see this bolt and then it's folded. So we've got a double layer, just like you would for quilting cotton. It is super nice and soft. It's got a little bit of loft to it. We're probably at like a 1/16 of an inch when it's all said and done. And let me just show you what this is like. This is fabulous to use for table runners, placemats, bags. I'm going to show you a bag in just a second. Anywhere where you want just a little bit of stability, but some of those other ones aren't really quite the right fit. This is going to give you soft stability and just a little bit of cushion. It's going to give you less than you would see in batting, for example. So that's what makes it great for table runners. We've got a table runner here that was quilted on our domestic machine with fusible fleece on the inside. And I will say that they do sell fusible fleece, and we do sell fusible fleece that's actually fusible on both sides. So if you're using it for placemats or you are using it for table runners, those kinds of things, double-sided fusible works really well. So you can fuse it on both sides and then quilt that together. So table runners are a great application. You can see this little bag here. It was quilted with just the single-sided fusible fleece here, and it gives just a little bit of structure, but not too much. It's still really very soft and pliable and nice to use. So that is that. Now, you could also do something like we've done in this chubby charmer. So if you look at this, you're looking at this bag and you think, boy, that's a little more structure than I would see in a bag this size using fusible fleece. You would be correct. This bag was made with 2 layers of fusible fleece. One adhered to the outside, one adhered to the inside, and then they were quilted together. So one of the most popular bag patterns we have, this is the chubby charmer, and you can pick that up on the website as well. But it's lovely. It fits a 9x13 pan, and it goes together with charm squares, or you can even use apple peels too. So that is, like I say, probably, if we're looking at just sales, the most popular just because of all of the applications you would use it for. Table runners, small quilted things, as well as bags and fun things like that. So now let's talk a little bit about foam. We've got a couple of different foam products that we see really often. This one, I'm just bringing you one of the bolts, but just know it's available in fusible single side, double side, and not fusible at all, sew in. This is the Bosal inner form. And this is, I love it because it's 45 inches wide. So you get a nice 45 inches if you're making something a little bit bigger. And this is a foam. Yep, you can kind of see this. This is a foam that's got fusible on as many sides as you need on this one. We love this interfacing, especially when it comes to our quilted sneakers. Now, the reason, and I'm going to compare this to a very similar product, Soft and Stable, in just a second here. But this one, we love the fusible because then you're getting both sides of your fabric on your shoe base, and it quilts up really nice. And so as I turn this around, you can see that it's not super puffy when you're quilting it. It's a very calm and low loft foam product. It's 100% polyester, and so it really does bounce back very quickly. If any of your polyester products, especially Soft and Stable, if you're using inner form, you do want to be a little bit careful about the fusible. But if you need to get out any of the wrinkles, or if it's just kind of smushed down, you can just hit it with a little bit of steam from your iron, and that will revive your foam product. Now, the other one I want to talk to you about looks very similar. It's very similar. This is Soft and Stable. Now, Soft and Stable, if you compare it to the Bosal inner form, is maybe just, I would call it maybe 20% thicker. And so what you're going to get is a much more loftier quilt. Both of these products you will definitely want to quilt, even if you do get the fusible and you use it. But you can see, while this is a very low profile quilt, this one has a little bit more to it. And so the Soft and Stable, because it's a little bit thicker, you're going to have that bumpier texture. Now, sometimes that's exactly what you want. In the case of bags, or in the case of this one, this is our 1 hour laptop bag. Woo, say that 5 times fast. 1 hour laptop bag. And so in that case, the quilting really does make the bag. This is another one of those products that is available in a multitude of colors. So we've got black if you've got dark fabric, and we've got white if you've got light colored fabrics, and it comes in all different sizes. Depending on how much you need, we even have bolts of it. You can get it off the bolt. So you can get all the way from a half yard to, I think, 3 or 4 yards, and then off the bolt. So there's lots of different options for Soft and Stable. And By Andy's is a great company. So we love to support them. So very closely tied to interfacings is fusibles. We talked about fusible interfacings and some sew-in interfacings. Now, these are this next little collection here are just fusibles without the interfacing. Now, some of these do give your fabric some body and some structure, so you do want to be mindful of that, but I'm going to give you some options if you don't want that, if you just want fusible. So let's talk with probably the one that we use the most, and that is Steam-A-Seam. Now, there are 2 different versions. We've got the Steam-A-Seam and we've got the light Steam-A-Seam. Steam-A-Seam is a little bit thicker, as you would imagine, and then the light is a little bit thinner. Now, in this fabric example, I basically, so Steam-A-Seam specifically is a fusible web that's sandwiched between 2 pieces of parchment. And that makes it really easy to use for something like applique, collage quilting. We use it a lot in collage quilting. But one of the nice things about Steam-A-Seam is that it's got a little bit of stick. And you can see all I did was fuse it to this fabric, and then I took off the backing paper, and it is sticking to my finger, which is great for collage quilting and applique because then you can put the thing where you want it. It'll stay put while you're arranging other pieces, but it's not permanent. It's not attached to your project until you hit it with that iron. And so I did want to show you, although it doesn't give it a whole lot, and this is the Steam-A-Seam Light right now. It is, you do have a little bit more structure, and I will get these in the right hands as I had them before. Here's the fabric with no interfacing, no fusible on it, and here's the fabric with Steam-A-Seam. So it's just a little bit less. It's actually a fair amount less than the 911. So it's like, I guess, a super featherweight effect on there. But this really is just interfacing. Or I'm sorry, this really is just fusible. No interfacing. But I will say when you get a couple of layers together with fabric and fusible, fabric and fusible, fabric and fusible, it does provide some bulk and it does provide some rigidity. So just be mindful of that when you're putting your project together. If you had a whole ton of layers all stacked on each other, there might be a different fusible that you want to go with. But other, pound for pound, Steam-A-Seam is one of our favorites. Now, if you want something that's a little lighter weight, there is a product called Misty Fuse, and this is just a very sheer fusible. This is fabulous if you are making those art quilts where you're going to pile up layer after layer after layer. You can see here, so the top is as it comes out of the package. So this is folded up a couple of times. The bottom that you could see my face through, this is one layer of the fusible. And so you're not going to get a whole lot of bulk if you put a whole bunch of layers of fusible and fabric and fusible and fabric all together. So if you're doing something where you need not a lot of bulk, but you need some staying power, you need some fusible, Misty Fuse is going to be the one for you. And there's a couple of different kinds, a couple of different versions, but this one is fantastic. If you need, so this one is another one that is a fusible product that is adhered to paper. And there are lots of fusible webs out there, but this is one that I wanted to bring up to you specifically. This is called Wonder Under. So if you wonder under what, I have no idea, but I guess wonder under your fabric. But this one is a fusible that is attached to a wax paper on one side. And so as I pull the side here, you can see that it is a sheet of fusible web adhered to a paper back. And it's probably, I would say, twice the coverage as the Misty Fuse. And so this one is great, and I feel like I'm going to get all that on my camera here. This one is great if you've got something that needs a little more oomph, right? It's going to have a little more heavy duty. Now, for all of these fusible products, you can't just fuse and be done. It's definitely something that you'll want to stitch around by whatever method is appropriate for your project. If just the glue alone is probably not going to cut it, especially if it's something that you are going to wash. And then the other kind of specialty product I will bring to you is this guy. And I should have opened this up before we recorded, but I got it all set. This is another Pellon product. This is Light Easy Steam 2. And what this is it is 1/4 of an inch wide. So you've got a little roll like this. It's 1/4 of an inch wide, and I left my fusible behind here, and it's a fusible web. So this is fantastic, and I'll take that apart. And you can see this isn't working out too well because I'm just trying to peel it from the paper without adhering it to anything. But this is great for putting on binding, for example. You use just a little bit of this fusible to hold down your binding until you stitch it. Like the other fusibles, this is not going to be the permanent solution. This is just to get you through until you stitch it on the other side. So you'll stitch your front side of your binding, wrap it around, use a little bit of this 1/4 inch fusible. You're going to put it on one side, stick it to the other side, and then iron it down. This, much like Steam-A-Seam, has a little bit of tack. You can kind of see it's holding onto my finger. It's got a little bit of tack, and so it is going to hold your product, your project, until you get around to pressing it and then stitching it. But the Easy Steam 2 in the 1/4 inch bit. It's also great for like the things you have around the house. So if you've got a hem that needs mending, those kinds of things, it'll take care of that. You could also use it in bag making to hold down those products, like a zipper, for example, until you get to stitch it. Okay, another specialty project. We've got, let's see here. We've got, these are all sew-in. So we are now yep, we're almost done with fusible. We're almost done there. So we've got here a couple of things that are incredibly popular, and that is going to be things to make bowl cozies. These are fabulous little things, but before we even get started, I did want to mention one thing. The products that you want to use for your bowl cozies, unless you put a very special bold waiver on your bowl cozy, is you want to make sure that everything you're using for these products is 100% cotton, both the fabric, the thread, and what we're going to talk about is the interfacing. I cannot stress how important this is because you don't want to put anything that's polyester into your microwave. And a lot of people do use their bowl cozies in their microwave. It's one thing if you just have it out and you put a hot bowl in and you use it to protect your hand. That's probably a little less important, but so many people put their bowl cozies in the microwave that you want to make sure that everything you're using is 100% cotton, fabric, thread, and the batting. Now, you can't generally use regular out of the package, same batting that you would use for a quilt. And the reason behind that is most batting contains what's called scrim. And it's usually like 10% or some low percentage like that. But mixed in with the cotton of your batting is little bits of things that aren't 100% 100% cotton. So there could be some polyester in there. They're not icky necessarily, but they aren't things that you want to go in the microwave. They work perfectly well for a quilt. You just have a little bit of that polyester in there. But for things that go in the microwave, things that get heated up, you definitely want to use 100% cotton. And so that is where something like Wrap and Zap comes in. Not necessarily in interfacing, but like I said, interfacings and battings are so interchangeable at this point that we're gonna just include it in the show. We're gonna be friendly and include this. So Wrap and Zap, for example, is a 100% cotton, no scrim batting. There are also things that are like pre-cut, like this, for example. This is a bowl cozy that is already pre-cut. You just put your fabric around it, cut out the notches where you see it on the batting pre-cut, and sew it together. You could also do fun things. They have these little cup cozies that are super fun to make. And that's a very similar thing. It's got the cup cozy that's already the correct shape. You cut your fabric out, you sew around it, and it's good to go. But I will say, it bears repeating, if you're making bowl cozies, 100% cotton, fabric, and thread. Nobody wants a bad, burnt smelling microwave. Similar to this, but not exactly the same, and I'll tell you why, is a product called Insulbright. And let me show you the bolt here. This is something that comes in both 20 inches. You've got 20 inches on this bolt here, and also 45, 44 inches. This one is a 100% polyester product. So this you would not ever want to put in a bowl cozy, but you can use it for something fabulous like this ice cream cozy. Fits a pint in there. That's a great use of this. A lot of people also put them in placemats, table runners, those kinds of things. And what this does is it is a heat reflector and a heat protector. And so if you have this in your table runner, for example. You want to have enough layers of this and batting to protect your table behind it. But if you do that, this is, like I say, heat reflector. And so it is going to protect your table from those hot things. So you can use like a hot pad. We see it a lot in hot pads or oven mitts, those kinds of things. There's even instructions. We've got it cut here, but there's even instructions on the wrap here to make a hot pad mitt. So Insulbright is a needle punched polyester product and is used specifically for that purpose to insulate from either hot, like a hot pad, or cold, like an ice cream cozy. Okay, here is another one. Now we're getting back to the quilting things. And this is, I think these are now officially into the specialty purpose products. Quilter's grid. So Quilter's grid is a piece of interfacing, and producer Ken, did we have that piece of batting? Actually, can I have that? Oh, actually, we're going to grab this one here so I can show you what this looks like. And this is just a 6x6 square of, or I'm sorry, a 3x3 square of the Quilter's interfacing. Now, as it stands, it's very thin, very sheer, very lightweight, and it's intended, this little grid is intended to help you line up your squares. So if you are making a Bargello quilt, for example, or if you're making a pixel quilt, anything where you've got these little squares. This little tote, for example, we lined up a whole bunch of squares and used Quilter's grid to keep it all nice and organized. So how this works is a couple of different things. So first, you cut out your piece of interfacing, and what you'll want to do is line your pieces up right in line with those squares. And so you can see if I hold this at the right angle here, you can see the blue line behind it. And so you want to make sure that no matter what you do, your squares are lined up in the spaces that are called out for you on the interfacing. And like I say, it's a pretty light interfacing. It does add some bulk, but not a whole ton. And so this piece, I have all of the squares adhered, and I have one of them sewn together. So once you adhere them together, you're not quite done. You'll still want to sew the strips together. So all you do is fold it down, and you can see that I've got those blue lines on the back side here. I'm going to fold it right on the blue lines, and then I am going to, just like if I were sewing normally, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance right along that edge with this is my edge and then a 1/4 inch in. I've already done that on this top row here. So you can see I folded it together, right sides together, sewed a 1/4 inch, and then we're good to go. And you can open it up, you can see how nicely those lined up because I followed the grid line, so I knew everything was going to be put together. Now, once you sew this together, you're going to have a fair amount of bulk, so you will take seam ripper, your teeny tiny scissors, something like that, and you're just going to cut that seam open because you've already stitched it. So you'll just take your seam ripper, and I should probably do that the other way with the little ball down, and I'm going to just slide it across, and there we go. It's always harder when you're doing it on camera. The most important thing with this is no matter where you go on this, before you fuse it, use the grid to line up your fabric. Because as you see in this particular case, you can see that my one fabric, my dark fabric, was a little bit long. And so I have this sticking up out of the seam allowance because it was long. But because I just used the grid to line everything up, it doesn't matter because this little bit is going to be in my seam allowance. It's not going to throw any of my blocks below it off. So once you get all of your pieces stitched that way, open up your seams. You'll do the same thing on the other side. So it's really kind of handy, especially if you have long rows and long lines. And you're going to end up with something like this. And I'll show you the back. These two, I just kept pressed together. I didn't open them up. And these ones, it was just too much bulk, so I opened it up. Whichever way you want to do it is just fine. You can open up all of them, or you can open up just your ending ones. But it really helps keep things on track if you are doing, like I say, one of the pixel quilts, if you are doing something where you've got a lot of these. And the other thing is you can take these and sew them all together. So instead of sewing 2 squares together and then 2 squares and then 2 squares, I'm getting all of these done at one time with just a little bit of the fusible. So this comes in a handful of different sizes. Probably the most popular is 2-inch and 2.5-inch of the squares, but it's a really great product if you have a project that needs that kind of love and attention here. And then these ones we can go through relatively quickly here. These are pretty special purpose ones. This one is the Pellon 830 Patternies. This one, it's not fusible at all. It's not an interfacing. It's not necessarily meant to go into your projects or your garments. This is a great one to keep in the shop because a lot of people use it for applique. You can use this as a piece to put your applique pieces around when you are stitching them onto your product. It tears really nice and easy, and it's really lightweight. But a lot of people, if you're garment making, for example, or if you're getting into garment making, you can use this to trace your pattern onto, and then you have a more stable pattern instead of like the tissue paper, or if you are using like photocopier paper. This is just a little bit nicer, a little flowier, and a little more stable. So we've seen it used for a lot of different things, but we do keep it in the quilt shop. And then last but not least, this one is, we're back to the true interfacing here. This is wash and tear. This is specifically for embroidery, for example, to stabilize your embroidery. It is intended to, you stitch around it, you tear off the extra that's coming outside of what you just embroidered, and then the first time you wash your project, this dissipates, it disappears. So wash and tear, again, mostly for those embroidery applications, but still an interfacing nonetheless to help get beautiful results when you stitch. So that was kind of a marathon show, wasn't it? I hope that there was at least one of these interfacings that you hadn't heard of before, or maybe were a little curious about, and I hope it gets you on your journey to just be a little more comfortable in that interfacing aisle of your local quilt shop or online with Gotham Quilts. So with that, we've got a couple of housekeeping things. Don't forget that our new season of Thread Talks is live. Please take a look, scan that QR code or take a snapshot and click on that from your photos and take a look at our new lineup of Thread Talks. We've got some great quilt inspiration coming up for you. You can also check out our Live with Gotham Quilts just a handful of weeks ago, where we talked through and a little more in depth everything that's coming up. So if you want some more information, do check out the playlist. It'll be linked at the end of this video to check out some other Live with Gotham Quilts, and our Thread Talks is there. And then last but not least, we've got our log cabin virtual retreat. June 1st is the end of that early bird discount, so sign up while you can. With that, I thank you so much for joining us. It was a fantastic show. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun too. And if you have any questions about interfacing, put them in the comments. We go back through and read them after the show. So if you're watching the replay, let us know what you thought. Was anything new? Did you know all this? Was there an interfacing that you're like, gosh, boy, that would really help me? Let us know. We love your comments, and do consider subscribing. There'll be a little button right after we're done here. So thanks for joining. We'll see you next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. That's going to be Tuesdays at 6:30 Eastern. And we'll see you then, if not before. And I really hope before.